Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. Thank you for listening. We would like to remind you that this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Known as just a silly boy with a feely heart. Please consider supporting the show. Check us out on Patreon or simply leave a review on iTunes. Here's your host and creator of the show, Known Wells.
Greetings, feely humans. Welcome to You, Me, Empathy. My name is Known Wells. How are you? Thanks for being here. I love you guys. Today's episode is episode 74, talking about how to validate the experiences of others. This is a really important episode, if I may call it that. I do think this is a really deeply human episode. Tony the therapist, and I talk a lot about just how we can sort of embrace validation in our relationships and experiences, and potentially some ways that we're invalidating people. We may not even know it. We may think that we're trying to help, but sometimes when we try to help, it can be invalidating. So we talk about some of the nuances of that. Really appreciated Tony's insight on this episode. This episode's also a very personal one. I read some writing I did about an experience I had where I was invalidated. I felt like I was deeply invalidated, and wrote a letter and read that as well. So please let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what you think about this episode. It was very personal, and I'm grateful to put it out there because I think this is something that is very human. You know, I think we all struggle with validating and invalidating, and I'm glad to put it out there. And I'm grateful for Tony to be a part of it, and for you to listen. Before we get to episode 74, I want to read a couple of new iTunes reviews that came in. This first one is from Cindy from Indy. I think I know who this is. Hello, Cindy. I'll call you Cindy. Cindy says, quote, honest and inspiring. I like Known's honesty. The people he has on have been through so much that is inspiring to hear them share their experiences. This is an important topic for all to listen to. Thank you, Cindy. I really appreciate that. And I love the honesty too, and I love the bravery and courage of my guests. It's really inspiring to me each week as well. This other review is from Darganfly8800. Darganfly says, a powerful podcast. As far as humans go, Known is one of the really good ones. His podcast is an excellent example of how to better communicate with honesty, empathy, and even vulnerability while embracing the beautiful flaws and stories that make us each unique. I appreciate that his passion is to help this world become more connected. Thank you so much. That is very nice. And it's true. Like, I want the world to be more connected. I want to validate our experiences because we're all so unique, and we all have such unique takes on the world, and we all have unique and real experiences that makes us who we are, and that is a beautiful thing. That is a beautiful thing, and if we can embrace that, if we can embrace that difference, if we can see the differences and accept them and see them and hear them and listen, what a beautiful path forward of learning, of growing, of connecting. And that's what I want in the world, and that's what I'm trying to achieve every single day, even though I struggle sometimes. So thank you for those reviews on iTunes. If you want to read, or if you want to write a review for You, Me, Empathy, that would be fantastic, and I would read it here on the show, and I'd be so grateful for you if you did that. 5 stars is my favorite number, 5 stars. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for listening and being here and being a feely human. We're in this together, right? Rightio. Okay, this is episode 74. How to validate the experience of others with Tony the therapist.
empathy, empathy. La la la, la 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 la. You, me. Empathy. Yeah. La la la.
Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a podcast about exploring the struggles we face in our day-to-day lives as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight, so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. You, Me, Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I am excited to sit down again with my friend and psychotherapist, Tony Remeinke. Hello, Tony.
Hello, Noam.
How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
You doing all right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
So today on the show, Feely Humans, we are going to be talking about a personal experience I had within the last month or so. Something that was really impactful and upsetting, and I want to bring it to your attention to not shame or not do anything of that sort. It really is about showing people how we can validate and invalidate each other. I want this episode to be about how we can better hold space for each other in our lives and give people the dignity of their own experiences. So that's what this episode is going to be about, based on this personal experience I had. Before we get to that, though, Tony has a very important message for you.
I do. I have my spiel when I'm on. So, well, hey, listeners. So good to be back here at You, Me, Empathy, and what you've heard me say before, you get to hear once again. So my name is Anthony Remeinke, but I go by Tony. But my licensing board here in the state of California knows me as Anthony, and that is the Board of Behavioral Sciences. So I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, license number 47805. And I have a private practice in Newport Beach, California. And as I usually tag onto this, I have the coolest job in the world. And I love doing what I do. And I love working with people and helping people grow in their relationships. And that's been such a wonderful experience for me to be a semi-regular contributor to You, Me, Empathy. And hopefully, help Noam in his wonderful endeavor here, your feely endeavor, and you were talking about giving space to people's experience, and really, I think that's what this podcast has become, is an opportunity for space, and for people to share their experience, and I think it's important, and you've already alluded to this, that what people share on this platform is their subjective experience. We're not looking for objectivity, right? We're not looking for there's an objective truth. What we're looking for is hearing people's stories, right? And that it's their story, and giving them a space. And again, You, Me, Empathy is providing that space for people to share their story. And stories continue to unfold, right? And there's new developments in stories, and there's new understandings, and there's new insights. So we're going to obviously get to that today, but
no, I appreciate that. That's a good introduction into. So, listeners, I'm going to be reading a sort of a play-by-play of sorts of an experience I had. Now, I'm a writer, so there's some. It's all accurate. It's sort of accurate into how I experienced this moment, and it is important to know also that my friends Justin and David were also witness to this experience, and it was so sort of eye-opening that the next day I needed to kind of talk with David and Justin about, did this really happen in this way? And they were very validating and sort of confirmed what I was sort of afraid of. But it did help, I think, it allowed me to sort of open up in this experience, and you'll see why in a moment.
So
yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to add that because I don't know if you did give context to this. So you're going to be talking about a experience that you had between you and your mother.
That's correct.
That happened 6 weeks ago, approximately.
Yeah, about there.
Yeah. And again, this idea that this in no way at all is a bash session to anybody. I think as you were sharing this with me before we started recording today, is that again, this is an opportunity to be able to talk about your experience, right? I mean, you're talking about this was my experience, and this is the emotional impact that it had on me. This is how it felt. This is what I heard.
Yes.
And so again, just clarifying, that this again is your space today to talk about your experience. This is how I experienced it. This isn't. We're not casting stones. We're not bashing. We're not. So
yes, thank you. That's good. Good point. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to read this piece of writing that I wrote. I don't believe you. Prove it. I looked at her, confused and scared by what she was asking me. I didn't know what to say, so I peered up at my friends David and Justin, who were seated across from me. Their faces mirrored my own perplexed stare, in awe of what was transpiring before them. David spoke first. Quote, I don't think you're hearing what he's saying, David said, pointing to me. He's not going to show you his scars. But I did. 5 minutes later, I showed my mother the spot on my arm, 3 slices across the left bicep. I used to cut on repeat to temporarily swap physical pain for emotional pain. That night, I was bullied into showing my mother my cutting scars. I showed her in defeat, truly gutted by what had preceded. Okay, here, I said. I lifted the sleeve of my shirt to reveal my 3 little scars, my 3 little once comforts. She leaned in to get a closer look, put her fingers across the scar bumps on my skin, and uttered, I don't see anything. 20 minutes earlier, standing in the kitchen of my mother's house, I was explaining a part of my life philosophy to my friends, my mother, and my mother's husband, Gary. My philosophy is grounded in kindness, empathy, and compassion, but also a little bit of accepting life for how I interpret it, a bit of chaos. So I said, in essence, that I don't feel like I have much control over anything in life, but myself and how I act and what I bring to people and experiences. It's at this point when Gary, apparently seething in the corner, started stumbling my way, uttering, What about your morality code? What about your morality code? I was taken aback. There was a righteous indignation and anger in Gary's voice, a targeted intensity. I didn't feel like I was talking about morality, but just one way in which I operate in the world. But it was clear to me that none of us were going to escape this lesson on morality, made even clearer when my mother asked Justin, David, and I, why don't I just kill you 3? I took a moment to think on those words. Why didn't she just kill me and my friends? And how the heck did I find myself here? I didn't want to argue about morality with my mother and her husband, nor did I think argument would lead to any shift in perspective. But David and Justin, saints that they are, took on the case of the missing morality. Over the next 15 minutes, David and Justin eloquently and respectfully shared their perspectives on morality, which I mirror in my own heart, which is that morality comes from generations of humans, from experiences, from our parents, from living life. Honestly, they couldn't have said it better, and I was so grateful for their input. I sat and listened, and Gary chimed in on occasion with, You'll understand when you're older, and you don't see it yet, but you will. Again, my mother repeated, So why don't I just kill you 3? And moments before, when Justin asked her what she wants in life, she responded with, quote, peace. Putting aside the incongruity of these desires, Justin graciously explained that murder isn't a good strategy, that murder doesn't lead to peace, that murder isn't in alignment with our evolutionary need for human propagation and connection. From my mother's perspective, morality comes from God and God alone. And if you don't get your morality from God, then you are devoid of morality. You have no morals, and you might as well just murder. I stood up from the chair at this point and said, Look, Mom, this is what I believe. I believe in kindness, empathy, and compassion. I believe in leading with my heart. I respect your belief, and I don't disparage it. I find that faith can be a beautiful act for people. And I have many friends who believe in a higher power, from the Christian faith to the Muslim faith to the Jewish faith. I don't have any ill will toward anyone who has a belief in a higher power. For me, I just don't believe in a higher power. I want to live by making an impact on the world, embrace empathy and meeting people where they are, and connecting with other humans while I'm here so we can grow and learn from each other. I spoke from my heart, and I was shaking with an excitement and anxiety for standing up for what I believe in. Then my mother exclaimed, "You are nothing but negative. Everything about you is negativity." "Mom," I said, "what are you talking about?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I am not a negative person. I believe in leading with my heart. I'm thoughtful and kind and compassionate. I make a podcast about empathy and compassion toward others. It's about healing suffering, I said. "I can't even listen to it," she said. "It's too negative." "Mom, it's about empathy and kindness and meeting people where they are, something I believe deeply in. There's nothing negative about it." Firmly, she stood. "You are negative. That's what you are. You're always talking about your diseases." "Mom, I have clinical depression. I am in recovery from anorexia. I have anxiety." But she didn't see me. She doesn't know me. She doesn't accept me for who I am. For the first time in my life, I am pursuing something that matters to me deeply. I am changing lives. I am leading with my heart. I am actually addressing the depression and anxiety I lived with growing up. I started to cry. "You were always so happy growing up," she said. "Now you're just negative." The tears had nowhere to go but down. "Mother, can't you see that I was a depressive kid? I had undiagnosed depression. I had suicidal thoughts. I almost starved myself to death. I struggled." "You think you had such a terrible childhood, like it was all terrible," she responded. "No, I don't. Aspects of my childhood were great and happy. There were bright spots, but I also struggled greatly. I was depressed and angry, and I hid it because I was terrified of my father. He hurt me. I cut myself." "You didn't cut yourself," my mother said. "I don't believe it. Prove it." "Prove it," I heard my mother say. "Prove to her that you cut yourself. Prove to her you were in pain. Prove to her that you were a depressed kid. Prove to her that I was anything but the image of me she wanted to see." I pulled up my sleeve and showed her my scars. "I don't see anything." I ran to my room and cried uncontrollably. I called Jessica, the person who sees me and accepts me for who I am. I didn't sleep that night, so I wrote this. I am deeply saddened and dismayed by all of this. The one parent who I have truly loved doesn't see me. To her, I'm a negative person. To her, I am without morality, one step away from murdering random strangers. To her, my mental health is just a collection of diseases. To her, my childhood emotional reality isn't real or my responsibility to explore or learn from. I am me, and that's all I can be. I'm sharing this experience because I think it represents a larger cultural and social obstacle we face as feely humans, as mental health advocates, as emotional wayfinders, as people who want to learn from our emotional experiences, grow with each other, not in spite of each other. And that obstacle is invalidation. So that was the experience, Tony. That was the experience I had. And I have a bunch more thoughts on validation and invalidation. But I do want to read the letter I wrote in response. So sort of for the listeners, that was a deeply sort of upsetting experience, to say the least. And it was the first time in a while that I cried that uncontrollably. And I didn't really sleep that night, which was hard because the next day I had to run a 25K trail run. But it was upsetting. And so I wrote that. And then about 2 weeks later, my mom sent me a letter in the mail, which I won't read here because it's sort of encapsulated in the letter I wrote back to her, and I haven't received anything from her since. But before I do that, did you have any reactions to what you just heard?
Well, I mean, a few. First, I really wanted to check in with you and just see what that felt like again to read, and so just to check in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's hard to read, and the letter may be even harder. But I love my mom. I do I do have a hard time coming to terms with this idea that, you know me, Tony, like,
Right.
I firmly, like, the work that I've been doing in therapy and just my own inner work and the work that I've been doing on the podcast and growing from the podcast, like, I feel like me. Like, I
Mhm.
feel like it's me, and this is like who I should be and want to be. And it's been so rewarding and connecting and healing. And I've made friendships, and I'm working on sort of a business idea, and I've got like it's so exciting to me, like
Yeah.
exploring this world and allowing myself to look inward and learn from my emotions and try to make sense of them, and to do that to grow and to connect and to heal.
Yeah.
Like, that is, I think, a beautiful thing that I believe we all should be doing.
Right.
And to hear from someone like my mother saying that is just negativity,
Mhm.
like, it's hard for me to wrap my head around that. I think if I were to, analyze it a little further and add nuance, like, maybe that's just a reaction to, like, sort of her experience. And she doesn't really believe that is a negative pursuit, but that's just kind of in the moment, emotionally, what she called it. Right. I'm of course open to any nuance and interpretation of the experience, but in the moment, yeah, it was brutal. And saying this sort of in retrospect, looking back on it, and then having the knowledge of her letter to me, which I think was an attempt at an apology, but it was more so like her asking me, why don't I accept her?
Mhm.
Which I feel is not what was reflective of the experience at all.
Yeah.
Like, there was no point in the conversation that night where I didn't accept her. It was really the opposite of that.
Right.
And so all of this is new, and I've been talking with my therapist about all of this, and I told her, I would be doing this today, and she's in support of it and feels it's good for me, and but yeah, it's been hard. It's been for sure hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, because some of the thoughts that I had hearing you, and we've obviously processed this, outside of this format, since it, happened,
right?
And we've been processing and talking about it, and it's interesting for for the fact, and again, I not to speak necessarily to this exact scenario because I can't. I mean, again, your mom's not here. You guys aren't my clients. It's not the capacity. I don't have the capacity or forum for that.
Move it, yeah.
Am
straighter.
I okay?
Yeah, move it straighter.
Audio problems here. So, but yeah, since but to kind of talk about it in generalities, so to speak, it's interesting because like going back to kind of how we introduced this, which is you have a story here, she has a story here.
Yeah.
So you both have your subjective experiences of what took place, and I think obviously what you're talking about today is your side of the experience. You're talking about what the impact of it was to you, and what it triggered, what it brought up, the emotions connected, thoughts connected, and and again, choosing this, you've been able to process it in therapy. This is a format where you're able to again talk about it, and I hope, and I'm assuming, do something different today than you used to do, which was bury something like this, right?
100%.
Bury it, in a dark place, and
the happy boy that my mother was referring to would have
had a closet full of
right. Like darkness that I didn't understand, and not knowing that and not exploring that, I feel almost killed me.
Yeah. Right.
And
so in a sense, it's dragging all of that out of the closet, right? And saying, here it is.
Yeah.
How, and I, and again, I get in my clinical work, I see this happen quite a bit as somebody starts to become empowered and they start to feel less shame about who they are, and they start to bring themselves out into the world, out into the light, out into relationships. And they start, I think, being able to tolerate bringing themselves out to people and sharing. And I think that's where, therapy is usually a place that starts, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It starts in that very safe therapeutic relationship. Hopefully it's a safe therapeutic relationship where, a lot of that becomes our feelings can be validated. A lot of our shame can be worked through and reduced. And we can start to look at ourselves more accurately and with more compassion and understanding and insight. And then we start testing that to the people around us, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we feel that we can start taking those risks, right? We can start being more vulnerable with the people around us. And sometimes family of origin is one of the most difficult places to bring out maybe what wasn't known prior.
Right.
And I think it's a difficult process in a family system, particularly because it may really upset and challenge the perceptions of the system, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and so furthering processing of, and I mean, family therapy is such a wonderful format for this exact type of dynamic, right? What was your experience? What was your experience? What was your experience?
Right.
And then communication being the tool to say, how are we going to set up safe and effective parameters to talk about something that carries so much emotional, weight, psychological weight, emotional weight, and talk about it in the safest of environments, and in such a way in which we may disagree or we may not see things the same way, but I can hold your story.
And
I can hold your experience.
That's all I really want in the world. I mean, I think this particular experience, had some more nuance that I'll get into later in terms of like what to do and what not to do in terms of validating people. But what I want in this world is for all of us to hold space for each other.
Yeah.
Because we've said it on the show many times, you and I in particular, there's not a one size fits all.
No.
There's not one singular truth.
No.
There's so many truths.
So many truths.
And I think it's narrow and damaging to think that there's just one way to go about things.
Right.
And to think about things.
Or that there's one story, right?
There's one story.
That that multiple people, whether it's 2 or 10, would somehow share the same experience.
Right. And the beautiful thing about that perspective is it allows each of us to, again, I always go back to this, but learn from each other and allow us to reduce our ego and allow us to be humbled and allow us to allow us to empathize.
Absolutely.
And allow us to really see people and really acknowledge that they experienced a trauma or acknowledge that they experienced this one truth that impacted them in this way emotionally.
Right.
And I think that is so important for just going about being a feely human in the world.
Well, and you, me, empathy, right? I mean, empathy. We're coming right back to that, which is foundationally, our platform, and bringing it back to, empathy again, by definition, is understanding another person's experience.
Right.
And stepping outside of your own. And, and I think in human nature in general, it's a difficult thing to do, and sure. I think as humans, as individuals, I think we all have varying degrees of capacity for empathy. And
it takes work.
It takes work.
And I'm not perfect. No one is. I struggle at it, and sometimes I excel at it, but it takes active work.
It takes very active work. It takes a lot of intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it takes a level of discipline and focus to, pull ourselves out sometimes of our natural organic defenses or how we may want to discount another person's experience and remain open-minded, even if it's so far from our own, and I think if we want to even talk about the political culture and climate and, and there are so many polarizing things happening, not just now. I know we always talk about what's happening now but fair to say there's a lot of various type of cultural, things that people are experiencing that people have very different polarizing, feelings and thoughts on.
Yeah.
And it would be so easy to shut down the other person's experience, because we just want to hold so true to our own. And again, it's not even that we're always going to look for agreement.
No.
That it's just, can you open yourself up? Can you stretch yourself?
It's not about convincing.
It's not about convincing right?
people that
Right.
this
My way
is the true
right way,
right?
right.
It's just
right.
It's just about having an open heart and listening.
And what I see all the time, and thankfully I see all the time. It excites me that I see it all the time. Is when you get people to start to understand another person's experience. When they start, and again, because it's usually something they have never thought of before. It's something they didn't think of, or it's a context they didn't understand. I mean, so that for me, that's exciting, because then I'm like, there's this new neuronal connection being made in their brain. There's a new growth in understanding, and they have stretched, and they have expanded, and they've now can have the potentiality of looking at something from a different perspective. And so it excites me when I see that happening.
Yeah.
So,
it's exciting to me too. And I agree that, something like the political landscape or any landscape
cultural
could
landscape,
benefit from, all of this, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to read the letter that I wrote to my mom in response to her letter. I've read this aloud a couple of times to a couple of friends, and I haven't cried yet. I did get a little teary-eyed, so we'll see if I hold that streak. Not that there's anything wrong with crying. I love crying. Crying is good for you. Okay, here we go. Mom, I received your letter in the mail, and I first wanted to say thank you for sending it. And I hear your expression of regret and ask of forgiveness. I'm writing this response letter so you may hopefully understand how deeply upsetting that night was. In your letter to me, you asked me, quote, "You talk about empathy, but is that something you only give to those you want?" End quote. For me, empathy is about creating a safe space for people to be exactly who they are. Empathy is about meeting people where they are. Empathy is about leading with my heart. Empathy is not about me, but about the other person. Empathy is about shedding our egos and opening our hearts fully to the validity of the experience of others. And I try to be as empathetic as I can with all humans. Even if I can't know the injustice and heartache experienced by rape victims, I can listen, give them my heart, let them know that they are loved, that their experience was valid, and that I'm here for them. But with empathy, boundaries are required, like with any emotional interaction with humans. If I, for instance, take on too much of the emotions of others, something I've done, certainly, that's a burden that's not fair to me or the other person inhabiting that emotion, as it robs them of their deeply personal need to explore that emotion. To your question, I think the implication is that I don't have empathy for you. But I do, Mom. I do have empathy for you. You have been through a lot of heartache and struggle and pain. I see all of that. In fact, I was there for that, listening to you and Dad again and again as I tried to make sense of it all, as I tried to console you in whatever way a teenager can. I see you, Mom, and I'm sorry that you've gone through what you've gone through with my father. No one should have to experience that, and my heart hurts for that, has always hurt for that. You say in your letter that you, quote, try to help people through it and not stay in the darkness, end quote. And I think that's great. But we each have our own path, each of them valid. I believe strongly, as has been proven by all psychological studies and decades of research, in the power and necessity of emotional wayfinding. That is, to look inward and ask the questions of our own hearts, of our own feelings and emotions toward the goal of learning about ourselves, finding peace within ourselves, finding understanding and self-acceptance and self-love. In your perspective, I am, quote, staying in the darkness with all of my, quote, diseases. And to you, that is negativity, and I'm nothing but negativity, which is what you said to me that night. Nothing could be further from the truth. 7 or 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety. These are parts of who I am, not all of me, but essential components to my human existence. They bring me pain at times, but they've also given me an opportunity to do the real, true, meaningful emotional work that I've learned through therapy, writing, mindfulness. Through the past 7-8 years, I've learned so much about myself. I've opened my heart. I have found deep meaning that has contributed to greater happiness, expressions of joy, ability to connect. in all facets of my life. I don't just, quote, get through it because there's nothing to get through. My mental health is a part of me, and I'm grateful for the journey I've taken. You say that I, quote, won't accept me and my flaws as you say you do in your podcast, end quote. As I said, I accept you. Your letter is in response to an experience I had wherein my own mother, in front of my friends, told me I'm a negative person, that my podcast is negative, that my emotional experiences aren't valid, that my cutting scars aren't real, and that I was without morals. This isn't about you. I've never said anything about not accepting you. What this is about is you not seeing me for who I am. You taking all the beautiful work I've done in my own mental health journey and calling it negativity. This isn't a one-way street. In the letter you said, quote, I'm a little mad at you for thinking about ignoring me. I'm a little mad at you for thinking that ignoring me is a way of being a, quote, better person who has grown up. You believe that your hurt and darkness in you comes from all your childhood, end quote. To be clear, I'm not ignoring you. I'm processing what happened that night. I'm processing the words you said that deeply hurt me and show me that you don't accept or see me. As I said that night, I don't blame you or my father for my hurt. As I said that night, I struggled growing up. I was scared of my father. I was hurt by him again and again. I felt alone a lot. I was dealing with undiagnosed and untreated depression and anxiety. I struggled with anorexia. But as I said that night also, it wasn't all bad. Of course it wasn't. I'm not dwelling on my childhood struggles to be, quote, in darkness, but to understand, to explore my emotions, to heal. That's my journey, not yours. And a core part of my journey is to embrace compassion, empathy, inward-looking, heart-leading mental health advocacy, to give people hope, to make them feel less alone, to meet them where they are. You choose to help people with cancer, which is admirable. I choose to help people with their mental health. When you made me show you my cutting scars that night, when you said, prove it to me, it hurt me deeply. Your words were so invalidating to my own real and true emotional experiences. But when you said, quote, I don't see anything, when I finally did pull up my sleeve to reveal my scars, I was further shocked. Mom, you see what you are capable of seeing. You see me as negativity, but those who know me see me as light. They see me as kindness. They see me as empathy. They see me as thoughtful. They see me as doing work that truly matters. I struggled growing up, and you don't have to accept that. You don't have to believe that is true, but it was true for me. You don't have to understand why I need to explore my emotions, but I do need to, as I think we all need to. These past few years with the podcast and with my emotional growth I've gleaned through therapy and doing the inner work, I've grown so much for the better. I'm proud of myself. I love who I am, and if you don't see that, I'm sorry. But that's not changing who I am. In kindness, known.
Wow. How you feeling?
I feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the letter I delivered to my mother. Yeah. I mean, I felt very, I wrote that in 10 minutes.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I felt very compelled to write it because I felt, she still wasn't seeing what I was saying. And her letter further sort of proved that to me. And I just want to, like, the great thing, the beautiful thing that we have in life as humans is seeing each other,
Mm-hmm.
And really, really like doing the work of seeing each other. And that's what we're talking about. And when you're not seen, it's hard. It's hurtful, especially when there can be, it's not like I'm telling my mom that she has to like go do emotional wayfinding,
Right.
I'm not asking that of her. I'm just saying, like, this is what I'm choosing to do.
Right.
I mean, I'm also saying, I wouldn't tell this to her, but I would say, I think that is work we all should do. I do. I think that's work we all should do.
Right.
But I'm not saying that to her. I'm not putting anything on her. I'm seeing her. I'm accepting her. But I'm not getting that back.
Right. I think what you're saying is I'm not putting certain conditions on her.
Of course not. No.
Right.
No. And so.
But reflecting on that idea of being seen, that's a huge value for me. And I think that's a huge, and I hold that value, I think, because of what I see that accomplish in people's lives, in terms of, I think there's an innate sense in each one of us that wants to be known.
No one wants to be known.
No one wants to be known. Sorry, it was too easy.
No, it's
but
every day of my life.
Every day of your life. but no, and to actually, pull this back actually to your name. I mean, known, to be known, and interesting. I mean, we've talked about the significance of your name in childhood and the, what that meant to the people who named you based on your understanding of that. And then, and then looking at it now today in the context of what we're discussing today. And, in a lot of ways, it does carry the same context, in this idea of being known, right? To be known. And I think, to be for us as humans, to be able to work through maybe the shame that we feel, the inadequacy, that we're not enough, and to then bring that into our relationships, not to bring our realness into relationships. I mean, one of the thoughts that I was having is, again, it's a risky thing. And I think it's important that we also be able to discern who are trustworthy people, beginning to learn who are safe people that we really can bring ourselves into. A great book actually called Safe People by Henry Cloud, John Townsend, talk about this in detail. So, it's important that we be able to discern, who are the people whom we can trust with our real selves. And I think as we start to do that, I think that's where we start also growing and unfolding and discerning and identifying, who are the people in which we are going to pour more of ourselves into, right? Relationally speaking. Yeah. And who are the people who can, really kind of be on that journey with us. So.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And being seen and safety, like these are huge components, and finding the people that we can, share that with is important. It is hard when it is, a parent, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like that's what I'm sort of struggling with now is like, not having a relationship with my father and finding peace in that. And like if found so much healing in that and therapy and stuff.
Well, and I think I can imagine, I think so many people can relate to that, that they're, their parents, caretakers, the people who raise them, may not know them very well at all. Right. I mean, These are the very people who we may feel don't know us actually at all. And, that is such a huge dynamic in the work that I do in psychotherapy and the way I conceptualize mental health and mental well-being and our capacities, again, is so predicated on our early attachments, early social environment experiences, and the way in which, the brain formalized around those experiences, and the way we develop what I call relational templates. And I'm sure that somebody else uses that too. It's probably not mine, but that's the language I use in describing that, each one of us shaped or formed these relational templates around our early social environments. And they were formed around what are our best chances at survival? How do we, best adapt to the social environment that we're being raised in? And so, there are certainly parts of us that develop out of that need, and there are parts of us that don't.
Right.
And a lot of that is dependent upon, again, our perceptions. I mean, this is all such a perceptual experience of the way we're interpreting information around us, which, first starts off from a sensory place. Since we don't have language, we don't have, higher level cognitive functioning. So, it first starts off from a sensory experience and then ultimately then moves into, a greater, larger type of experiential processing. But we develop all kinds of filters, we develop all kinds of defense mechanisms, we develop all kinds of coping strategies. And a lot of times one of those, strategies is to not show the world parts of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Or even in therapy, a lot of times it's reconnecting the person to parts of themselves they've cut off, they're not even aware of.
Right.
And getting those parts to develop and becoming a fuller human being, right? And hopefully that leads to greater relational satisfaction. So, I kind of feel like that's what we're talking about. So, what leads to safety, right? I mean, I know one of the things you wanted to talk about was validation and invalidating and
Yeah, no, and we'll get there in just a second. Hearing you say that, I thought about this idea that change is an important part of it, right? Like,
sure.
we as humans are growing all the time
All the
and
time.
changing
Hopefully
all
growing
the
all the time,
time.
right.
Hopefully,
Hopefully.
right? That's the
Right.
aim, right? And I think that another part of this equation is accepting that and
Yeah.
accepting that things change and people change,
Correct.
right? And for instance, the person that I was as a teenager, I'm not as a 37-year-old.
Right.
Like so much growth and insight and stuff. Experiences have shaped me who I am, and in another 20 years, I'll be another
you'll
person.
even be
I'll
right.
be very different, right?
Right.
And so I think that's an important part, because I think when it comes to maybe these foundational ties of family and friendship, like there is a and I'm not saying this in the case of my mother, but like I've seen this, I've witnessed this, holding on to that person, holding on to the idea of what we want that person to be. And that's and it's hard. It's hard to accept change sometimes, of course, but like change is an important part to accept,
right,
if we are going to really meet people and see them.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And as you're sharing that, I'm reflecting on my own relationship with my daughter, and I'm thinking about, the challenges I've experienced, even in spite of my education and knowledge and experience, that, sometimes the conversation that she and I have is around that, exact topic or idea, where she'll have to say to me, like, no, you're not seeing me, or, you're not. And she's right. I mean, I'm still seeing her as the 12-year-old version or the 14-year-old version.
Sure.
And she's 18. And, 12 to 18 is significant in our development and our change and our growth and our opinions. And I just, out of, a template that I have that I carry of her, I will still, and again, we've developed the type of relationship that I'm thankful for, that she can bring that to my attention. There's a lot of people out there who can't.
That's nice. Yeah.
And we can talk about that, and she can introduce to me, this happened last night. We're coming back from LA, and we were having a great conversation, and she was really able to speak in to me new things about her that I just didn't know, in terms of how she's thinking about the world and how she's thinking about herself. And, but I got to know her, so much more as a result of that. And it was,
That's great.
I hope that was helpful for her. It was extraordinarily helpful for me to see her differently and understand that, she's changing, she's growing, she's looking at the world in a different way.
Yeah.
I can't assume that it's the same way it was a couple years ago.
Right. No, that's a good example. And I'd imagine, obviously I'm not a parent, but I'd imagine it is especially hard for parents to accept that change in their kids,
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
But, especially I'm thinking, and I don't have this experience yet, but I'm believing that particularly the life they've had outside of our house after they've left, right?
Yeah.
And they've lived those years, let's say 20 to, whatever, onward, and we haven't been with them on that path, on that journey, and all the things that have happened to them and shaped them.
Right.
And so, so maybe they do have a little bit of a frozen in time type of perspective.
Yeah. Makes sense. Let's talk about some ways, and things that I've experienced and witnessed and sort of done some research on, in terms of like how we invalidate each other. And I have a list here of just a couple of sort of little things that maybe on the surface you wouldn't think that they're an invalidating sort of thing. Maybe some are a bit more direct, but I think I bring them to you because I think that when it comes to validation and invalidation, it can be tricky, and it's a learning process. And I think we need to be patient and kind with each other and kind to ourselves and stuff. And so we're all learning together.
Right.
So we're in this together. I'm not some great teacher. I'm learning along with you, listeners. So here are a couple of things that, so consider some of these responses to someone sharing their real emotional experience. Let's say I'm sharing this experience and you, Tony, say it could be worse.
Right.
For instance.
Right.
What is that? That says to me like, oh, he's minimizing
Right.
my experience. He didn't like, that would tell me like, oh, he didn't even hear me. Like he's not listening.
Right. He's not really hearing my experience or what it meant to me. Right.
Yeah. He's thinking about something potentially that could be, way worse or whatever. And of course, anything could be worse.
Correct.
But it's about recognizing and seeing their experience and saying, I see you.
Right. Well, and this is a tricky one too, as you were kind of alluding to, and most of these probably will be, because, I've been on the other end of that statement many times. I'm sure all of us have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen couples do this to each other in therapy, families. And what's always so fascinating about it, 99 out of 100 times is, that they're coming from a good place, and most of the time, it's the idea that they don't want us to feel bad, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's, they're trying to, take away our experience, not to, rob us of something, but in a sense, but morally, more so, they're
just seeing that we're hurting. They see that as a way to take away that hurt.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. One of the ones I hear probably most frequently is he's in a better place, after somebody has passed away.
Sure.
He or she is in a better place.
Yeah.
And that may or may not be true, but the idea is, you're missing my pain.
Right. Right.
You're missing, somehow the idea that this person may be in a better place, does nothing, to validate my hurt and my loss and the pain I'm experiencing.
Right.
Probably one of the, least validating types of things to be able to do to somebody, because it's like, regardless of that, right? It's like, I just lost X. I feel like my life will never be the same.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to wake up tomorrow.
Right.
And if you can see that in me, surprisingly, and I know that it's scary to some people, because I think some people fear that if they reach us in a level of pain, that may somehow make things worse, or, and ironically, I think it lends itself to what we're talking about, which is, no, if you can see my pain and you can be with me in my pain, then I feel safer. I feel better. I feel seen. I feel known. Supported.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good example. That's a really good example. I hadn't thought about that. And we'll get into like the validating part of it in a little bit, but I want to list a couple more of these sort of invalidating things. One is, and this is something I've heard and have seen, is everything happens for a reason. Right. And, that may or may not be true.
Right. You may subscribe to that. You may not. Right?
Yeah. No one knows. Right. Who knows? Who knows? But again, all of these will have the same sort of reaction from us, is like, you're not seeing the pain.
Correct.
You're not seeing that person and what they're going through. You may be trying to help, and that's good. Helping is good, but that's not a productive way to help.
Because it goes back to what we've said with he or she's in a better place. It's trying to make somebody probably feel better, as we said, but again, take and it probably shuts a conversation down, or the sharing.
That's true.
It probably there's no where do you go with that?
Yeah, where do you go? Yeah.
And so I call those, conversation closers, because they shut down a conversation most of the time, because the person in pain or the person hurting will shut down, because they no longer feel safe. They don't feel like they're being heard. They don't feel like there's room, right? Space for their experience. So it'll tend to shut things down. And a lot of times in these scenarios that we're talking about, people need to process, right? They need to talk, they need to share. So it's important, I think, to, meet somebody where they're at. It's interesting. I reflected on this too. I've even heard, people in sessions say, it could be worse. They're talking about their own experience, and they interject I'm doing it again. I'm side talking. They interject with their own, well, it could be worse. And
totally. I've done that. Yeah.
And so,
we do it to ourselves.
We do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I'll point that out in session and we'll process that. But, this kind of recognition that, it's like and usually it's something like, you're right, but you're invalidating your own pain, right?
Yeah.
You're invalidating your own, you're minimizing your own experience.
Right.
And where did you learn to do that? Or what is that serving you to do? Is that, so.
Yeah, no, totally. The other examples I have are a little bit, I think, maybe less trying to help and more just things maybe you shouldn't say, potentially. One is, why are you so angry? Which is something that I've heard. The other is, that seems unbelievable. That may be trying to help. The other is, you'll get over it.
Yeah. I mean, you'll get over it. Definitely sounds like a door shutter.
It is a door shutter. You'll get over that loss, that trauma or whatever.
And I was thinking with why are you so angry? I'm like, boy, the tonality of that would sure make a difference in terms of
absolutely.
Like,
it would.
Why are you so angry?
Yeah, it would.
Or versus like, why are you so angry?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like one could potentially be exploratory. The other,
I mean, that one may be sort of more specific case, of
context.
Context. But the other one that I've heard and I think is important to bring up is the forgiveness part of it. Like, you need to forgive this person. You need to forgive them. Like, let's say there was something that happened where, someone was deeply hurt by, I mean, let's just use this example of my mom, right? Like, if someone said that to me, like, I would feel offended. Like, I was like, that's not what this is. Like, you're not hearing me. You're not seeing that, like, I was deeply hurt and I'm processing that pain right now.
Yeah.
And to say like, oh, you need to forgive them is like, oh, just move on,
Right.
Put a Band-Aid on it and move on. And I don't think that's healthy.
Well, and I think there's the potential to lose the opportunity for a lot of growth, right?
Absolutely. 100%.
I mean, individually or maybe even potentially between the dynamic of you and your mother. Like,
100%.
Wow, we've got a lot maybe to learn about each other. We've got a lot of our stories maybe to share and understand and grow. And, so yeah, door shutter.
Yeah, exactly. So all of these statements, however they were intended, it can be very invalidating. So I want to talk about things that we can say and things that we can do to better validate each other's. I have a few just kind of tips here. Listen, active listening, right? Be present,
right?
Remind yourself that feelings are valid. Feelings don't mess with silly concepts like right or wrong. They're reflections of experiences. You're holding space for another. Recognize and accept their emotions. Like, try to be a mirror, a reflection.
Yeah.
Like, responses like, that sounds so hard, or I hear you, can be helpful. Like, be gentle, be open, listen to what they're saying.
Huge. I can't even, punctuate this enough in terms of importance. Carl Rogers, who was a humanistic psychologist and one of the most amazing men to me. And it's funny because when I was going through grad school and reading about and learning about all the different theorists, the significant major theorists in psychology and therapy, Carl Rogers in his humanistic approach seemed person-centered is what the actual approach is called, person-centered therapy. It was the most basic, what I thought, simple type of psychotherapy. He was very person-centered. It was very much about open-ended questions. Carl Rogers did not see himself as the expert. You were the expert of your own life, and I loved his humility. And
there's a lot of humility in that.
A lot of humility.
There
was so much warmth. I mean, he really conveyed so much warmth, and he just saw himself as a journeyer with the person, and he would. The tenets of person-centered psychotherapy is, all the things that you're kind of pointing out, which again are kind of the basic tenets of counseling or psychotherapy that we use today. But it's, joining with the client, and it's providing them with safety. We always talk
Mhm.
about safety and
Yeah.
trust and warmth. But unconditional positive regard, was a huge cornerstone. Active listening, reflective listening. So what I hear you saying is,
Right.
help me understand more about that, and these types of open-ended questions to get somebody to really talk about their experience. Empathic attunement. I mean,
Mhm.
these are really the cornerstones of people feeling experienced by another human being. And I think that's what he did so well. So in his simplistic way, as I was learning about him, to be perfectly honest, it seemed too simple. I kind of wanted to move past Carl Rogers and into the meaty, deep, psychoanalytic,
Yeah.
Freudian, post-Freudian
Oedipus
theorist.
complexes.
Yeah, I mean,
and-
get into these multi dimensions of the human mind,
Yeah,
and the id, ego, superego, and subconscious, and everything. And what's so fascinating is, come many, many years now away from grad school, and
so many years away.
so many years away. Thank you for that. And the gray in my beard is a reflection of that. And I'm finding myself so much more drawn to the simplicity of Carl Rogers and the impact of what he developed, and so simple and yet so profound.
Yeah.
So profound. So
Yeah. I love that. So, again, holding space, listen actively, accepting, trying to be a mirror, reflecting. I think we mentioned it earlier. Another thing we do as humans is invalidate our own experiences. So we can also work on validating our experiences. And a few things that have helped me is, one, accepting my feelings as valid; two, not being ashamed of them; three, sitting still with them, trying not to push them away; four, practicing positive self-talk; five, recognizing my strengths and weaknesses. All of us have both, and that's okay. Understanding that emotions aren't either good or bad, they just are. Understanding that I'm not my emotions either. I am more than that. Look inward tirelessly. Seek to understand your heart. Be curious.
love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love helping people become reconnected to their emotional selves. Again, I think we mentioned this already earlier in this podcast, but so many people grew up in ways in which they need to disconnect from their emotional selves.
Yeah.
And that was, part of their adaptation, coping. It was a necessary skill for survival, or an adaptive skill for their best chance at survival, emotionally, psychologically, so forth. But so a lot of times it's turning that system back on. And I literally kind of reference this as there's your emotional switchboard, like an Inside Out, kind of idea.
I love that movie.
And it's, we need to literally get that thing flipped back on, so you can become, connected to your emotions, because our emotions are it's a communication center, and it gives us information to understand our world. And if we're disconnected from that, then there's a high tendency that we're going to be depressed. There's a high tendency we may be overly anxious, and we may have relational problems and struggles, or maybe even deeper pathologies and addiction. But we're missing information. We're not actually taking in information.
Yeah.
And if we're not doing that, how do we make good decisions? How do we really make good choices and good decisions? I almost say it's like the nerves that we have throughout our body and the nerve endings. And, you touch something pleasurable, you want to touch that again. You touch something that's extraordinarily hot, you learn, don't do that again.
Right.
Well, we've heard the stories before of the medical condition where people don't have pain receptors.
Right.
And that leads to broken bones.
Scary.
And, all kinds of potentialities for death and high risk. Well, turning off our emotional system is the same thing. We run high risk of problems and psychopathology and depression and, chronic depression. I've, worked with people who have shut that system off or never developed that system, very early in life, and have, spent a majority of their life in depression.
Right.
Disconnection from the self. So, so getting ourselves reconnected with our emotional selves, is huge.
Well, it is the human experience.
It is actually the human experience.
Yeah. Right. So I got a few thoughts and questions from the Yumi Empathy community. This one's from Natalie. She says, how to stop unconsciously searching for validation. So I didn't get any more context other than that. So where I'm taking that, maybe, and Natalie, you can correct me after the fact if this is wrong, is sometimes I think maybe she's implying that searching for validation, like looking, trying to seek it out, can
Right.
be problematic, can be maybe lead to some bad behavior.
Yeah, you're right. This one's a little difficult to understand contextually, maybe exactly what's being asked. But if that's the case, then yeah, I mean, if it's a healthy sense of self, is maybe what she's talking about, and how do we seek that out? Then I think ultimately that's more of an inside out experience than an outside in, if that makes sense. Meaning, and I always see that as our true internal sense of self grows when we start to get the validation, the healthy, positive, accurate validation of who we are as we begin to share ourselves with the people around us whom we can trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we start to bring our real selves out into relationships with other people, and we find that we're lovable, acceptable, because these are a lot of themes I think that a lot of us run around in life with, is that we're not lovable, we're not acceptable.
Yeah.
And so we do a lot of hiding. We all have a closet that we like to keep parts of ourselves hidden in because we truly do not believe that they are acceptable. And so we may find ourselves seeking validation in very external types of ways,
That's a good point. And I think where I'm going with this, maybe where Natalie was going with this, is like there are ways to be validated that builds us up in a way that's being seen, in the way that's healthy, right?
Right.
But there's also a way to be validated, like let's say I want to continue with a behavior that may be damaging to me,
Sure.
like emotionally, physically, whatever.
Right.
And I want to be, I'm seeking validation so I can continue to operate in that way.
Right.
Have you seen that? Have you experienced that?
Well, I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about as you shared that was performance-oriented, like workaholism.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And, it's climbing that corporate ladder. And there's nothing wrong with climbing a corporate ladder. But again, what's the motivation, right? What's actually driving that?
Right.
What's underneath all that? And if it's
ego,
if it's for I'm attempting to get value out of my continual career growth, therefore I'm killing myself to get that growth, or I'm sorry, to get that value, to get that external validation. I've seen people, engage in some very unhealthy behaviors because life becomes so out of balance, right?
Right, right.
You're not actually capable of listening to yourself probably very well. And this drive has become so overwhelming that everything in your life becomes poured kind of into that. Well, balance, again, you threaten to be very imbalanced. And I think if we're very imbalanced, bad things or unhealthy things can manifest as a result of that. So, and I don't think there's room for real happiness in those scenarios. I think, people can come into treatment, highly successful people can come into treatment who have accomplished amazing things and report feeling totally empty.
Right, right.
And very depressed and very unsatisfied. And, and then ultimately it's helping the person identify. It's like, well, what were they really needing? Right. Yeah. And if it's value, then this was the way they thought would give them value. Or maybe they did get affirmation early on. Maybe I've heard people say like, in high school, I got great grades and really wasn't extraordinarily important to me, but it felt good. People recognized I was intelligent or that I could get good grades. And so I went into college and, attempted to do the same thing. And I drove myself into workaholism in school, right. Always studying, living a very imbalanced life, maybe doing very unhealthy things to keep that going. But not even being connected to the experience. I mean, not even knowing, not even enjoying or understanding why they're in college or why are you studying what you're studying? Like maybe not even being connected to that. And then all of a sudden they graduate college, they go into a career. And again, maybe even wondering at times why they're in that career, but then pulling themselves back to the idea that this is how I'm valued, right?
Right. They're not connected in the way that we need to be connected to the emotional dashboard,
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And, so not uncommon for people to at that point or many, many years into this, start to reflect and go, I am not happy.
Right.
Or I'm having suicidal thoughts, or I'm, I'm, just, I've reached this position that I always thought was going to be, that would make me happy. And it didn't make me happy. In fact, I'm severely depressed.
Right.
So,
this is a comment from Alexandria. She says, validation makes chronic illness so much easier to handle, which is, great. Good. I'm glad that you've had some validation, Alexandria, because anytime depression, chronic illness, anything that is a part of you, like my depression or my anxiety, like being vulnerable and being able to talk about it and having others listen and hold space for me is so huge, and it's such a it makes dealing with that illness or struggle so much easier for sure. Yeah, no, it's a good.
Well, it's something you and I've said before. I mean, so many people think they're the only one.
Oh yeah,
and oh my gosh, no. I mean, if you want to talk about the true human experience, I guess, when we really talk about, mental health problems or severity of mental health problems, what we're really talking about are the extremes of the normal human condition.
Right.
And so, pathology is really just about something that really falls into the realm of impairment and, problems of functioning. But these are all very human experiences. And so to think that others don't struggle or that we are somehow alone, oh my goodness, I would love everybody to know that that's not true.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Lauren says, this is a comment. People can invalidate whatever makes them feel uncomfortable, in parentheses, self-protection.
Which is very true.
It's very true. What are your thoughts on that? Because my first inclination is that, of course that's true. And that happens all the time. But I think that's not. I think it is important to protect ourselves and have know what we can trust and know safety and all these things, and know how to recognize those things. But again, there's also the matter of meeting people where they are and listening to them and hearing them, and we don't have to agree with their experience. We don't have to say that is fact or true or whatever.
Right.
It's just their experience. And it's true to them.
So true. And I think the thing, and again, I don't know if it's a human condition thing, how we're wired, but I find that most people have to learn how to be validating. Maybe some people grew up in a family in which validation was a part of their early experience. And if so, good for you. But I find it to be rare, and I do find it's more of a not a learned behavior, because we all have the capacity to do it, but it's something I think we have to be intentional about, because I think our easier, just more organic tendencies is to be defensive or even to throw out to try and soothe somebody's pain, like we said earlier.
Sure.
So much easier to say, hard times, come and go. You'll survive this, which again, it's a wonderful sentiment.
Yeah.
But the idea that being able to validate somebody's experience, somebody's difficulties in validating somebody's experiences because it's too threatening to them. That happens.
Yeah. Well, let's start wrapping it up. I think there's a lot here, and thanks for listening, everyone. I think there's a lot here just about, validation and invalidation, and sort of giving people the dignity of their own experiences, and seeing people and meeting them where they are. This is what Yumi Empathy is all about. It's what I am all about. It's what I want to do in the world, and it's in 20 years, I want to hear from Tony saying oh yeah, it's rare that people aren't invalidated.
Are you giving me 20 more years? Is that?
You probably got at least.
Do you think I got 20 left?
15, 20.
Okay,
I'm
I
just
appreciate
kidding.
it.
No. When
That
we're
was so optimistic.
20
of
years
him.
from now, when we're chatting about
Right.
this, like, and we're millionaires because we created this amazing business, and
Right.
we're still kind of in the field, and you tell me, like, look, actually, it's rare nowadays that I hear from people, and they didn't grow up in an invalidating environment.
right.
Like, that is what I want in the world. That's why I do this podcast. It's why I continue to try to get my face out there and write, and it's why I'm working on the thing that I'm working on, which is vague, and you'll hear eventually more about
you
that.
just dropping little breadcrumbs.
Wow. You'll hear more about that soon, but it's just,
Is it fair to say there's some things in the hopper?
There's some things in the hopper.
Right.
I have no like timeline, but
Right.
I'm working on some big ideas, and it's exciting because I just want to continue to make more of an impact in this space, and I want people to feel validated. I want to meet people, and I want to develop empathy and vulnerability and the emotional wayfinding. Like, these are so important to me.
Well, so without dropping anything, I guess, because you and I obviously have had conversations about this, and I just want to tell the listeners that there are some really cool things that you've been talking about, and I think kind of expanding the work that you're doing into some very exciting ways. So yeah, I'll throw those
I'll just tell it.
crumbs out
It's
there.
called Empathy Strippers, and it's just about I'll go out and strip, and then also talk about empathy. You guys into that? No, I'm just kidding.
You may have lost half your community there.
I'm just kidding. It is not that. I'm just being silly because I'm feeling insecure. But yes, thank you for that, Tony. And listeners, you'll hear more about it at some point, because you're a part of this. Like, you're very important to me, and you're a part of this community. And I feel I hope you're as excited about this new thing that I'm working on as I am, and as Tony is. So I appreciate you. Make sure to follow You Me Empathy on Instagram and Twitter. Give us a rating, review in iTunes and Google Podcasts. That would be great. I like to read them on the intros, so please do that.
So can I throw something out?
Please.
So it's been forever coming, but I finally got just a basic website up. So if people at least want to be able to just see this old mug, they can go to yourtherapistanthony.com.
Nice.
Once again, yourtherapistanthony.com, and check that out. There's not much of anything up there yet, other than some basic verbiage, but I'll be adding a lot of things, and connecting you and me together through that, so it's another platform for people to be able to start checking out. And then the quick thought, just in wrapping this up today, I just for people who may be thinking about the people around them that maybe they feel like they're not known by or whatever, just to kind of pull this back to what we said again, this isn't to bash those people. This isn't, everybody's on a journey, everybody I think is doing the best they can. And so, to have empathy in all directions of people's experiences.
Yeah.
And then again, if anybody wants to expand on this subject today, or any topic that we talk about, you and I are both obviously huge encouragers of personal psychotherapy.
Absolutely.
And
go find a therapist.
Yeah, find a therapist. And
have a friend to talk to.
Yeah,
about
get
whatever.
somebody to. Yeah, if this really brought up some things and something that you'd want to pursue. We both of us obviously we can't, from a personal and a professional point of view. Yeah,
no, thank you for that. And listeners, I'll make sure to include Tony's website in the show notes for this episode. And that's it. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks.
For being here.
No, thank you for always having me on. It's always a really enjoyable time. So
good. And to you listeners, I'm here, you're here. We're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's You, Me, Empathy.